Good morning, I'm Morgan Donner, and today I'd like to show you how I made this medieval style leather case. Leather cases are really awesome. They're one of the few things that we have many surviving extant examples of. They were made in a really wide array of shapes and meant to hold all sorts of things. Things such as scissors and other tools, kitchenware like spoons, or this very fancy cup here from the Victoria and Albert Museum. I wanted to make one of these for a long time, but it wasn't until an amazing person named Barry Hicks posted a series of videos a couple months ago showing all the steps for how she made her leather case that I finally had the motivation to sit down and finally make one for myself. Today's video is going to be very light on actual instructions since there's literally already a step-by-step tutorial out there. I'll put a link for that down in the description box. Go check it out. First thing for me was to scavenge some wood from Mr. Donner's woodpile. Thank you. And I made my wooden mold about the size of my cell phone. I then sanded it down a bit before wrapping it in a rather thick layer of leather. One end is wrapped in leather while the other was left free. Wow, look at these delightfully asymmetric stitches. I don't do a lot of leather work, folks, and it definitely shows. I suppose the only way to get better, though, is just keep practicing. I'm using a much thinner leather for the second layer here, and I'm shaving down the edges with a skiving knife. Be careful about what surface you're cutting on. I put down a layer of masonite to protect my table, but a slab of marble dedicated for leatherwork would be even better. With the edges thinned down, I can finally get out the bag of hide glue that I purchased years ago for this exact purpose. Awesome! I needed to mix up a small batch using 1 part glue to 3 parts hot water. If you're doing this, keep the batch in a bowl of hot water to warm it back up to the liquid state. Once it cools, it sort of gelatinifies, which is exactly what we want. I'll rough up the smooth part of the leather edge here where they're going to overlap. That'll give the glue to sort of something to grab onto. Apply the glue, but definitely use a larger brush than the tiny one I did here. For the third layer, I'm using some brown paper to make a pattern so that I can get a good fit without wasting too much leather. The fourth and final layer will need lots and lots of skiving on all edges. Skive forever and ever and ever, and then skive some more. And when you're done, take a break and keep on skiving, because it's going to need really thin, carefully done edges to make it so that it looks nice in the end. I made a bit of an error when applying the last layer. I glued both parts, the case and the leather, but then I realized that I probably should have figured out how I wanted these edges to fold down before applying the glue. Something to definitely remember if I ever make another one of these. I should also try to keep from letting the glue get onto the outside of the case. A little won't hurt anything too much, but I honestly had way too much. After letting that dry for a couple days, I could start on the fun decorating part. Wetting the leather and then letting it sort of soak in for a few minutes will soften it enough that it'll take a mark. I heavily based my drawing off of this tool case. I like the relatively simple design, which is great for a beginning leather worker like me. Once I had the drawing physically where I wanted it, I went over the lines with a stylus, gently pressing into the leather through the paper. My image is now lightly impressed, but I want to make the markings a little deeper with a swivel knife. This cuts into the surface of the leather, but not all the way through, just enough to really mark it well. Now I'd like to add some dimension to the case by tooling some parts of the design down, which will make the non-tooled parts sort of stick out. The effect is subtle, but it definitely makes a big difference. The background is looking a little plain, I think, so I'm adding some little circle marks to help create some more texture. A very common feature on these type of medieval cases is to make a little channel on the side to thread a cord through, which you can then use to hang off your belt, and you'll never ever have to worry about misplacing the lid on this type of box. A quick little PSA, don't put your leather in the oven to speed up drying time. Or if you do it better than I did. I ended up getting kind of a slightly burned section here. Be careful as you stretch the channels open. This one started to split whenever I let it get too dry while stretching it out. Dry overnight and then remove the dowels. I'm not too worried about this discoloration here. I'm just going to be dyeing it a dark brown anyways. Time to try separating the bottom part of the case from the lid. After some careful prying, the lid is off. Turns out I had a little bit of glue here on the inside. Now comes the extra fun part. I need to get the wood form out of the case. I cut little notches out of the end here to help get the wood out, although in retrospect, I really wish I hadn't. More on that in a moment. It's time to dye the case. I have a couple different bottles here. One is a leather dye, while the other is a color stain. Both are brown, so I did a little test strip to see which color I liked better. Turns out, dye won. I applied the dye, although I probably should have dampened the leather a little bit first. Here's the difference between 2 coats versus just 1 coat on the lid. And now this is several layers later. It's nice and dark, and the burn spot on the back is far less visible. Excellent. I really don't love this notched opening though, and I also kind of wish the lid was more substantial feeling. My friend Rotrude, who has actually been working with me pretty much side by side this whole time making her own first leather case, she cut her inner 2 layers much lower down so that the inner case is on the lid as well. That is something that some of the extant cases have as well, which is super awesome. So I think I'm going to copy her a little bit here, and I'm going to mark out a new cut line and then place the notched cutoff part inside the lid with more glue. A very handy, although decidedly not medieval whatsoever, way of clamping everything together while the glue dries is Velcro. I happen to have a ton on hand, and it's actually been really useful throughout this project. I posted a video a couple weeks ago showing how to make a finger loop cord, which I'll link to down below, but you could use a store-bought cord or even a strip of leather instead. I'll be using a hairpin to make a sort of quick needle. I'm gathering up the looped ends and then threading them through the leather channels. The cut edge inside the box is looking kind of fuzzy and unkempt, so I'm going to burnish this edge to make it a little bit more cleaned up looking. See how shiny it is now? I touched up the inside with another quick coat of dye, although I should have been a little more careful. I ended up spilling a bit on my fingers, and I wasn't wearing gloves. Whoops. that just about finishes up the case for me. So now, when I'm at events, I can slip away from the action, off to a quiet corner, and check my messages or voicemail, maybe even take a selfie. All without ruining the medieval aesthetic of a given area. Very sneaky. Although, I'm also often the one taking pictures at events with my huge camera, so I suppose I'm maybe not the highest authority on maintaining a period look. Really, I just wanted to make a cool leather case, and figured that making it cell phone sized would be pretty handy. It actually ended up a little bit too big, but that's okay. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. If you're interested in making your own, please do check out the link in the description box for Barry Hicks instructional videos. If you like this circle brooch here, I have some on sale on my Etsy, as well as some of these A brooches on the hood. Please do forgive my slight plug here. I hope you guys all have a wonderful, wonderful day, happy leatherworking, and a good night to you.